I mean, the Albanese government must take us all for fools if they think that a modest cut in some power bills from the 1st of July will somehow make up for the earlier 27% rises over the past 2 years, especially after the Prime Minister promised no fewer than 100 times that if you elected him, he'd cut your power bill by $275 per household per year.
Households will benefit by $275 on average. Reducing power prices by $275. Prices by $275. $275. $275 a year. $275. $275 a year.
Today, the Energy Regulator issued what's known as the default market offer, and this was its draft form. In it, the regulator proposed that the basic power price, the so-called default market offer, would drop for some households by between 0.4% and 7.1%, depending where you live. But it would rise for other households by between 0.9% and 2.7%. In other words, if you managed a cut, it would be very small and a long way off cancelling out those power increases of recent times.
Labor's promise of a $275 reduction is dead, gone. And if you look at what Labor had promised and what they will have to pay by next year, in some parts of the country, the difference is up to an additional $1,000.
Here's also a graph put out today by Senator Matt Canavan showing that power prices are up $380 on Labor's watch. And no wonder, because everything the government's doing is driving prices up, not down, or robbing Peter to pay Paul by using taxes out of one pocket to subsidise power bills in the other pocket. Sure, wind and solar, that Labor says will be 82% of our power within 6 years, up from around 25% that we have now. It is relatively cheap, I'll give them that. But only when the wind's blowing and the sun's shining. We, of course, need power 24/7. By the time you throw in gas firming and batteries and everything else needed to keep the lights on when the sun goes down and the wind drops, renewables, well, they are far from cheap. And then there's all the extra transmission lines, at least 10,000 kilometres of them by 2030, that we will need to have to cope with a decentralised grid, all of which we're either paying for now as taxpayers or later as consumers. Indeed, if you consider the fact that transmission costs equate to around 40% of our power bills now, just wait until all those new lines are built, some $100 billion worth, and that cost is then passed to us on top of what we already now pay in our power bills. Those costs will be huge. Here is O'Brien again.
Today was the moment of truth. This was the moment, because whenever we criticised the government for that promise, they said, wait, we're going to do that in the year 2025. Well, this year, today, we find out what the prices are likely to be in 2025. Yet the government still will not concede that it won't meet that.
But back to the Prime Minister's pre-election promise to cut your bill by $275 a year. Energy Minister Chris Bowen keeps hyperventilating about the effect of the Ukraine war as an excuse for Labor's broken promise. But Labor was still promising to cut your bill by $275 in May 2022, 3 months after the war had started.
Ensuring that renewables are 82% of the system, of the national energy market by 2030, will reduce energy costs by $275. Cheaper electricity bills, $275 a year off your electricity bill.
Look at those dates, long after the Russian tanks rolled over that Ukrainian border. Here's opposition energy spokesman Ted O'Brien again.
Their commitment was by 2025. Yeah. Today we heard the prices by 2025.
For half of the year.
And therefore, what we are looking at is no longer just a broken promise. As of today, this is a deliberate lie.
Today, Labor were hoping that journalists were just dumb enough to regurgitate the line that this offer from the regulator would mean a decrease in power bills from the 1st of July. No surprises, plenty of journalists this morning fell for it. But again, look at that graph from Senator Canavan. Prices have gone up and up over the first 2 years of this government. If you live in Western Sydney, for example, you've had a 37% increase to your power bills since Labor first were elected, meaning that a single-digit drop, as little as 0.4 for some homes, maybe as much, let's give it to them, maybe as much as 7% for others. Well, that's still a 30% differential on your power bill. You're still paying, even with the drop on the 1st of July, 30% more for your power bill since Labor was elected. Now, there's no $275 cut coming for anyone at all. It's a great big fat lie out from Labor, particularly given what's ahead of us is more renewables, not less, 82%, as I said, by 2030. And Labor is still dead set on all of these targets, even though achieving them is certain to drive prices higher. Now, it might not happen in July, but as soon as all the new wind and solar farms are in and the transmission lines, it all has to be paid for, and that will get passed on to consumers. And here's another problem. Most of the wind turbines and solar panels that this government loves are made in China. So not only is our power becoming more expensive and less reliable, we're increasing our dependency on the communist superpower. Visiting Australia this week, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, well, he must marvel at what we're doing to ourselves, making ourselves poorer and weaker for the sake of futile green gestures. All the while, China's creaming off billions by selling us their solar panels and their wind turbines, as they then open more and more coal-fired power stations to burn Australia's coal.